Oxenfree is a game by Night School Studio that came out in January of 2016. It combines elements from platformers, visual novels, and horror games to make one heck of an experience. You play as a character named Alex who is meeting up with some friends from school on Edwards Island to have a classic teenage shindig. You know, the kind I was never invited to because I was a huge nerd. Anyway, you and your friends all disembark from the ferry and have a relatively tame time until Clarissa, the resident jerk, brings up some shitty stuff from the past. To escape from her negativity, you decide to verify a strange rumor about the island involving radio signals and piles of rocks. Totally normal hunky-dory stuff about being able to contact the dead. Oh yeah, did I mention that this has something to do with a government conspiracy cover-up about a sunken submarine full of Navy dudes from the island? Maybe just a touch convoluted. Anywho, this is a classic tale of teenagers messing with shit they shouldn't be and then opening the door to malicious spirits. The game calls them waves, but I'm sorry, no. That's how it justifies the presence of this anomaly, which just isn't good enough for me. Suspension of disbelief aside, you create a huge mess by poking the proverbial bear and then have to delve further into this shit in order to set things right again. Again, if there is a moral here, which there doesn't have to be, but if there is, I think it's that you should confront and resolve that which haunts you instead of dredging up somebody else's past. With the basic gist out of the way, let's get to my thoughts. First, there are a lot of positives here. The art style is charming and nice to look at, with the focus being on the world you get to explore as opposed to close-ups of the characters. This works well with the platforming and exploration parts of the game. The soundtrack, while a bit heavy-handed at times, fits nicely with the overall vibe, and there's so much to interact with and investigate that my appetite for solving things and putting the pieces together was sufficiently sated. But if I had to highlight the greatest strength of this game, it would be some of its more unique gameplay mechanics. You use a radio and tune into various stations in order to access the other side and communicate with/gain hints from spirits. You also use the radio to unlock various doors, that's just freaking cool. Additionally, this game has a unique collaborative aspect. Your decisions can influence other players. At certain points in the game, Alex will be standing in front of a mirror or the water's edge, and will see her reflection. Only it isn't really her reflection, it's another player telling you which choices to make at other points in the game. Seriously, that is such a novel idea. Now unfortunately, I did have a few things I wasn't too crazy about. First would be the characters. I just didn't think most of them were that strong or well developed. I thought the most interesting characters were probably Jonas and Clarissa. The only thing Alex really has going for her is a dead brother, and Nona and Ren are just annoying. Especially Ren. Really hate that guy. But let's focus on what makes Jonas and Clarissa so strong as characters. Jonas is the new kid in town. He is Alex's new step-sibling, and everyone is wary of him due to various rumors about what he was like in his old place of residence. No one knows what to expect from him, and the game does a good job of playing that up. Clarissa, while mean-spirited, we find out has a sympathetic reason to be. She was in love with Alex's brother Mike. Presumably, she has had to watch as Alex gets a virtual monopoly on grief over Mike, because how could a bereft high school girlfriend compete with a mourning sister? Having to walk on eggshells at the expense of her own grief would definitely cause resentment to build, and again, the game does a good job of having that manifest in believable ways. Aside from those two characters though, I just found the others to be pretentious and annoying. The other main flaw was the dialogue. First of all, there's way too much of it. Second of all, it's like the devs read a textbook on how to be a pretentious, snarky teenager, and then had verbal diarrhea. But the main problem I had with it was that Alex can interject with various dialogue options that expire after a certain amount of time elapses. While this helps sustain the illusion that the dialogue options matter, this was poorly executed, as many times you're forced to choose a dialogue option and literally interrupt what someone else is saying or not say anything at all. This negatively impacted the flow of conversation more often than not, as I would be constantly having to cut off other characters who were speaking in order to contribute to the conversation. After a while, I just stopped caring about what the other characters had to say because this mechanic was so poorly executed. However, for $9.99 on Steam, you get a pretty creepy experience with a decent, though certainly not perfect story. If you can overlook a few issues, it's a decent game with some pretty innovative gameplay mechanics. Anyway, those are my thoughts.